Thank you so much for the introduction to both Daniel and Fabiola, and we are going to share our screen. Okay, so thanks Fabiola for the introduction. As you mentioned, ORU is a Mexico City-based urban design and applied research practice that has specialized in resilience and climate-sensitive landscape infrastructure. We met both, Elena, Tudela, Adriana Chavez, and myself, we met at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. What brought us together was that we helped Mexico City authorities to put together the city's application for the Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient Cities Initiative, which the city won. And then from there on, we have accumulated a lot of experience in the academic, the public, private, and development-backed sectors. And we're going to start by quickly showing you some of our past experience. The image on the left is Mexico City's resilience strategy, which we also see, to the right, we see a water-sensitive Mexico City, or towards a water-sensitive Mexico City. We can see an image of Quebradora Park and also the linear park La Viga. In 2018, the three of us decided to establish our own practice. And we have gradually incorporated five other great members of the team who I believe are also here. Thanks to you guys, we would be nothing without our team. So we're going to start with a small introduction, and then we'll talk a little bit about an ongoing research that has sparked quite a lot of interest in both the public and private sectors, which is called Distritos Hídricos, and then we'll jump to Circuito Ambiental Bogotá. So resilience is a mindset. We see it as a mindset, as a lens or framework that cuts across different scales, different ecosystems, and social, political, and economic contexts. So in other words, for us to be resilient is to be able to adapt in a world that desperately needs to change. Resilience has also allowed us to find new domains for design's investment, for its utility and service to the world, as once Hashim Sarkis put it in one of the Venice Biennales. So the world is really not on track. We are facing enormous pressures and challenges. More and more we see more events such as wildfires, which contributes to the loss of biodiversity, and that's something we'll tap on when we go to see the Circuito Ambiental Bogotá, but also heat waves, wildfires, and floods everywhere in the world. So our practice questions the role of designers in light of the most pressing issues of the 21st century. The challenges are so complex that we are required to blur the boundaries of design with those from other fields of knowledge in order to seek solutions, especially in the context of the current crisis, right? We live in Mexico City, which, as you know, is a multi-risk area. We come from a place in permanent crisis, and that's why we have more and more questions rather than solutions. So it is our laboratory. We have worked in Mexico City, but that has expanded our vision to other Latin American countries with similar challenges. And this has made us realize that there's no other choice than to experiment and take risks, but also we need to evaluate and learn from experimentation. We believe that we need to invent new technologies and new prototypes and new urban models that allow us to review the past and the present so as to better imagine and communicate the possibility of alternative future worlds. As Raúl Mtra, a professor at the GSD once said, a shift to future speculation is crucial for urban planning and design to retain its cutting edge and relevance. So we see there's a call for action and we need a paradigm shift. We see an urgency for social and environmental equilibrium. There's an immense amount of ecosystem degradation and exacerbated social inequalities. On the left, we see a picture of Chapultepec Park and Los Pinos, which is a presidential home, now being transformed to a public facility. That's only 5 kilometers apart from some of the most vulnerable areas in the city. And as you can see in the image to the right, these series of ravines that have been inadequately urbanized. So our approach is really a process. We believe in territorial advocacy, not just isolated projects. We believe that design is a mere component of a much larger process. There are other elements that need to be addressed before and after implementation or construction with a comprehensive vision. And working with academia, government, and development banks has taught us that urban scale projects can never escape the socio, political, and economic dimensions. This is a snapshot at Oru's projects, which range from research to installation, urban design vision and strategies, landscape infrastructure projects, to academic research with students at UNAM, led by Elena's seminar. Maybe she can tell us a little bit about that later on. And now we'd like to quickly present the concept of hydric districts, which is linked in many ways to the Circuito Ambiental Bogotá. This research is called Medium Scale Redevelopment Districts as a Model for Sustainable Water Management in Mexico City, in the case of Tacubaya. This research is being funded by the Mexico Innovation Fund with the grants program of the David Rockefeller for Latin American Studies, and we are being guided by Anita Rico, who is a professor of landscape architecture and chair of the Department of Landscape at the Harvard Graduate School of Design. So as we all know, the water crisis in Mexico City is urgent, and the city continues to face enormous pressures to redevelop in a more compact and sustainable way. The current water management model is no longer sufficient for providing the most basic water services for new developments. And water management policy is becoming increasingly central to the negotiation between urban development and water sustainability in the city. Historically, Mexico City's approach to the water crisis has been either at the monumental scale of great infrastructure, or more recently at the scale of uncoordinated green infrastructure. However, while plenty of resources are allocated for public and private construction works, almost none are channeled towards establishing an integrated water planning and management system. In the past, Mexico City has had an almost incredible confrontation with its geography. That has been especially violent from the second half of the 20th century to the present. So under the lenses of history, data science, ecology, geography, this study is reviewing new tools that can allow us to better understand multi-scalar issues so as to more effectively imagine and communicate new spatial imaginations that will allow us to transform Mexico City. This research reflects upon the role of design as an agent to construct multi-sectoral participation frameworks that can guide future water-related public policies and decision-making. And it explores the elasticity of the urban and landscape design disciplines because it's embedded in the very dense fabric of the city. Just quickly, the concept of hydric district is a highly implementable urban framework that will serve to test alternative physical models of decentralized urban water management. The project is contributing to raise public awareness, inform multi-sectoral participation, and promote the sharing of responsibilities among multiple stakeholders. In contrast to conventional large-scale infrastructure and piecemeal small-scale green infrastructure, hydric districts offer a more grounded and coordinated framework to address the water crisis in Mexico City. We are thinking of where to test this model. Tacubaya is very interesting, not just because of its location and its history, but also because there are already multiple interests around the area. In the past, water abundance and climate made it a perfect site for agricultural activity, and later on, the preferred site for summer estates. We can see here how Tacubaya this is a risk map. It's just outside the more, where there are different overlaps of risks. And in this image, we can see Tacubaya's past and present. This is the border of the lake, roughly, and this is Mexico City's downtown. This is Tacubaya. So Tacubaya has been defined by both its location in this condition of border settlement of the lake and also proximity to Mexico City. This is roughly an image that shows the Tacubaya's hydric district. It's borderless in a way, and it's something that we are reviewing. But most of all, the team is working as a bridge between water, urban development managers, citizen and social groups concerned about the future of water. We believe that the Tacubaya Pilot Hydro District will help demonstrate how Mexico City can advance towards a more sustainable, informed, and co-responsible water management vis-a-vis the most pressing issues of water stress and climate change. And now we will talk about the Bogotá environmental circuit. So Elena, if you would like.
Yes, thank you, Victor. So I'll continue our presentation talking a little bit more about our project that became very special to us, particularly because it allowed us to collaborate with Taller, whom we're sharing this conversation with, Julian here. So this project was born from an invitation from Julian and Pablo from Taller, which at that time were designing an incredible and unique, very long, many kilometers long trail in Bogotá Cerros Orientales, or Eastern Hills. And in their conversations with the mayor in office at that time, Enrique Peñalosa, they were interested in a larger and integral vision or effort to bring together several projects that they had going on and to integrate new ones, sort of like following the path of what Victor just mentioned in terms of towards Mexico City's more sustainable water project book. So we worked with a local team, which also included architects from the GSD, Manuela Guzman, also a Mexican team with Monica Arsos, and a very large project that allowed this planning exercise to be able to be completed as a book and as a larger project that interconnects many aspects of Bogotá. So the CAB, which is what we call it, its environmental circuit of Bogotá, it's Bogotá's commitment to position itself as a city that plans its territory with a view to integrate urban development with the natural environment, and also its water resources that basically run through it as an articulating element, from the páramos, which are these ecosystems that are very unique and to Bogotá and to this side of the continent, one of the largest in the world, but also its river and how the city has moved between these two systems and has grown within those two systems. So at its core, the CAB is about an urban environmental integration at a larger scale. And its objective is not only that integration, but also promoting an improved relationship between Bogotá's citizens and the city's urban development, and also their natural resources, obviously with a focus on water as the main articulator of the projects. So it represented a paradigm shift that restructures society and nature, where they're not seen as something external to each other, but that they interact and coexist within a larger project. So they're not, what the project allowed the city to do is to visibilize how they're codependent and the potential for a more sustainable and resilient city. So I think this is a representation of the whole project. And now we're seeing one of the main axes, the transversal axis that the project focused on, which is biodiversity. Bogotá is located in a savanna that borders the Eastern Andean Mountains, as I already mentioned, and it is one of the second most biodiverse countries in the world. It is also the main ecological corridor in South America. So even though when we speak about Bogotá, we don't think about all of these natural resources, it's very important to place them in the focus or in the vision of the city in its future. So biodiversity was one of the axes, the transversal axis. We also had public health, water management, water culture, more of a competitiveness aspect of the city, soil management, and biodiversity, as I already mentioned. And we did a study, a historical study of the city and of this territory in terms of its landscape and its ecosystems. So it was a land that was a swamp with wetlands and flooding So basically in that way, it's very similar to Mexico City in that it had a very direct connection to water. So Bogotá has lost approximately 90% of its wetlands today. There are only 700 hectares of the 5,000 hectares it had in 1650. So we're seeing a huge transformation. We can see at this image how amazing those wetlands are and how they still have a big size. And here we see a time lapse of Bogotá's growth and expansion towards these ecosystems and these ecological resources. So being a point of high concentration of biodiversity, as I already mentioned, Bogotá is located in a region with an abundance of water. Yet urban development is disconnected from its natural wealth and assets. So when we were studying Bogotá, we figured this is how Mexico City was way before things got more complicated. So we believe that they're still on time to divert the current urban development patterns of the city to include and coexist with its natural resources that are so vast. The convenience of having clean water coming out of the tap does not make visible the magnitude and fragility of the water supply infrastructure. So what we're seeing in this image is one of the paramos, Chingasa Paramo here in this image, which is one of the, well, it's a national park and it's one of the main sources and hotspots for the water of the city. 83% of the water consumed in the capital comes from this paramo, which produces, well, that amount of water per second. But yeah, that's just a figure. So the territory of Bogotá works by altitudinal stripes. That's how its ecosystems operate. So having a section was very important, understanding that paramos are up in the hills, and then we have all of this forest ecosystems all the way to the river and the wetlands, and that's where the city inserted itself. Each strip is determined by the passage of water, and the alteration of the cycle intensifies unfavorable conditions for each ecosystem. Here what you're seeing is the final proposal for the whole circuit, which included the ongoing projects that the government was developing, but also the ones that we suggested should be included, because most of the issues that were analyzed for the city had to do with the pollution and the lack of, well, not only the pollution of the water, but also its river and the diminishing surface of those wetlands. So this is a basic idea of what those structural projects were for this CAP. You can go to the next one.
Can I just quickly add, Elena,
Sure.
that the projects in pink are the projects that the municipality had been thinking about along this green line to the east, which maybe Julian can tell us a little bit more about. The green spots are areas where sustainable urban drainage systems can be placed in the city. This was a research carried out by the Universidad de los Andes. And then the yellow spots are the areas that we identified through a methodology that Elena can explain a little bit later in order to prioritize the projects.
Yes. So this is a spatial analysis we developed for this project, and we analyzed 4 aspects. First, the environmental aspects. Second, the urban aspects. Third, the socioeconomic and life quality aspects. And fourth, the risk and vulnerability aspects. So after understanding the whole city under these lenses and doing a diagnosis of what the current state is, if you can go to the next slide, we developed a map of where those problems were overlapping, where those conditions became particularly important to address by any project happening in the city. This way, any project that would take place within the city limits would be able to understand their role within the larger context. And then finally, we developed the zones of opportunity where it'd be easier to focus on addressing those issues, sort of like the quality of water. If you pay attention to where they're polluted at the source of the pollution instead of at their final destination downstream in the river, that it started to make more sense in terms of the projects that needed to be done first and in a sequence. These are just examples of the different zones where all the projects were inserted and what type of projects were suggested, with some sort of like vision of what they could look like. So we did that for all of the cities of all of the zones of opportunities within the CAB. So if you can go through them, you can see the different conditions the city has grown into in terms of its relationship to nature. It was a very long project that we believe becomes sort of like the basis for many other interventions. This is the last slide. So we believe there is a forgotten solution to climate change in which we must invest, and that's nature. These transformative projects are a result of a collective effort that requires links between advocates, designers, policymakers, communities, and politicians. And we believe no alternative world will be possible without an ecosystem of designers willing to experiment and collaborate, but also without technicians, politicians, and decision makers determined to also tackle these challenges. So we want to highlight, and I think this is the last one, right, Victor? So we just want to highlight the importance and relevance of these future urban environmental shared visions. That's why the multiple actors become really important, that integrate these resources with development through water. And also what we wanted to point towards where and how to start in the context of Latin America, which Julian will also be addressing in his presentation, where projects tend to fail because, or we have few examples of very successful cases in Latin America, probably mainly because they're not understood in their whole impact and benefits, or because of political timings that need to be overcome, or a lack of this vision that allows people to understand how impactful they can be, even if they're small in their scale of intervention. So each region has its own challenges, and we share some with other contexts, such as China. So I'm sure we can talk more about this in the conversation, both with Kongjian and Julian from Taller.